So, what is this journey towards awakening? For most of us, the initial impetus to even go on that journey is often deep suffering, tragedy, loss, perhaps loss of our health, illness or death of a loved one, loss of a relationship, loss of finances perhaps. And everything that we've been taught from very young children as the key to happiness in this lifetime, being successful, having a good relationship, having a rewarding job, somehow in those moments of crisis, you could say, feels like it's just not enough. As good, however good it's been, it's not quite enough. And we've seen people, in the news, famous movie stars have everything in the world, and yet they want a little bit more. More fame, more money, more relationships perhaps. It's not quite enough. So this sense of not enough, or something's not quite right, or something isn't quite fulfilled in my life, is actually the driving force towards awakening. Without that driving force, we'd probably be quite content with our life. So when we look at it from that perspective, it's actually possible to be grateful, or at least allow the difficult times in our life. And I'd suggest when we look back on our life, and if we're being honest with ourselves, we can see that it's actually been the most difficult times in our life that have been the most transformative personally for us, which is odd when you think about it, because it's exactly those situations that we do our utmost to avoid. So we actually avoid our transformations. I don't mean that we need to seek out suffering. Life is a wonderful teacher. From that perspective, we can see situations that arise rather than something that's done to us. We can actually see those situations as life nudging us in the direction of a deeper awareness of our being. So that's really the first impetus towards awakening. And often the second thing that we do is think, I've heard that spirituality, meditation is something that will give me peace, give me joy. So we sit down to meditate, and we remember the directive from thousands of years ago, know thyself, look within, and we sit down to meditate, and oh my God, there's just this stream of thoughts, stream of consciousness through our mind. And then our meditation teachers tells us that what we should be doing is quieting our mind, so we try to do that, and that doesn't work. It seems to energize our mind even more when we try to manipulate it, to control it. And it's almost like two factions in there, one doing what it's doing, the stream of consciousness, and this other thought process saying that shouldn't be happening. But the fact is, it is happening. And one of the necessary ways to approach awakening is that we're honest with ourselves. We're honest with ourselves. In this case, we could say thoughts are happening. I can notice that I don't actually control those thoughts. I can't turn them off and on. And that's actually a huge realization, that thoughts happen without our consent, without our control. But at the same time, we're not defined by those thoughts. Those are thoughts that we've picked up along the way. if you look at a very young baby, they are fully conscious, fully aware of everything that they see in their field of vision. They don't know what it means. They don't have names for it. They don't have opinions about it, but it's fully within their vision. They're taking it all in. They're in awe. So we weren't born with this. We learned it along the way, that we were separate individuals walking around in a great big world, having to look out for ourselves and protect ourselves from physical as well as psychological threats. So meditation is a useful practice because it gives us an up-close and personal look at how our minds operate. And one of the things that's possible to see is that there are moments of silence, moments when the thought process stops, if even for a split second. We tend not to pay attention to those, but they do happen. And not only in meditation, but they happen at other times in our life. If we are suddenly surprised by a cat jumping out of the bushes on a dark night, or come around a corner and there's a magnificent rainbow, and for a moment there's a moment of awe before our mind comes in and says, oh, what a wonderful rainbow. During lovemaking, hopefully we're not thinking. So when we notice that there are times in our life when thought stops, that's a huge key right there, because what that means is that what we are continues to exist in the absence of thought. Therefore, what we are isn't dependent on thought. If it's not dependent on thought, it's not dependent on having the right set of beliefs. It's not dependent on having the right dogma, the right opinions. What we are is beyond concepts. Has to be larger than a concept about what we are. So in those small gaps is hugely instructive as to what our deeper nature is. And that silence is still aware, still alive, just without the content. That's the doorway to awakening. And we can approach it conceptually. We can sort of get our heads around it. That's okay. It's helpful maybe. It's not awakening. Having a concept about awakening is not the same as having a full body, mind-blowing sense of, oh, what I am is not limited to this body-mind. It is consciousness. Awake, spacious consciousness, not limited to the body, not subject to birth and death. The difference between having a concept, adopting that as a belief, and having, you could say, a full body recognition in the moment of that, the reality of that is night and day. Night and day. We can't manipulate, we can't intuit ourselves to that awakening. Our job is to get in the vicinity of that. Our job is to get to the point where we're grace-prone for awakening to happen to us. And we get in that ballpark by noticing these moments of silence, being grateful when they come, not being ungrateful when they disappear for a while, again, being grateful when we step back into that awareness of our body. Mindfulness may help because it provides us with a bit of separation between what we are and our thought stream. Mindfulness is also something to go beyond, because it's not me watching my thoughts, it's really spacious awareness within which thoughts happen. It's also helpful when, say, we're walking out in the woods, to do so without the compulsion to name, label, analyze everything we see. It's possible just to walk down the path and notice that panorama. Notice the intricacies of nature, the beauty, without saying, oh, how intricate, oh, how beautiful, just receiving it. And if we have an opportunity and discipline to do this as a formal practice, sitting, meditating, wonderful. Daily practice. But I would say almost as important, if not more important, is to bring ourselves back to that space of noticing that this awareness is present many times throughout the day. We don't need 45 minutes to do that. We can do it when we're stopped at a stop sign. We can do it when we're waiting for checkout at the grocery store. Many just pauses during the day. Oh, I exist. I'm here. I'm alive. I may not know what I means, but there's this sense of awareness, aliveness. And the more we can sense into that, we become attuned to that, the existence of that awareness beyond our thoughts, beyond our bodies, beyond our physical sensations. So these are ways we can practice to get ourselves in the vicinity of a moment of vulnerability when we let our guard down and grace rushes in and shows us what we really are. And that is, we could call that awakening. It's not the whole package. It's not the end of the line. There probably isn't an end of the line, but it's a very, very significant transition where we transcend the limited thoughts of this is the full extent of my existence. It's a freeing, it's an unburdening, and that unburdening feels so good that it's a moment of bliss, of joy, of belly laughter, of just relief that the burden that we were carrying our whole life to protect this body-mind, to protect our feelings, is no longer necessary. So that's in very brief form, that's some of the techniques that can be used to get ourselves in the vicinity, and the avenue that's most productive when we go on this journey for awakening. So I wish you many blessings on your journey.